December 3rd, 1971. Indian Navy's Western Fleet is sailing out of Bombay when it is clear that war with Pakistan is about to begin in the next few hours. Unknown to the fleet, a Pakistan submarine lays waiting outside the Bombay harbor to target it. The enemy submarine successfully identifies the Indian fleet sailing through and prepares to fire. This incident happened during the 1971 war between India and Pakistan. In early 1971, the Indian Navy was planning out operations along the coast of West Pakistan to subdue the enemy's naval capabilities in the upcoming war. A part of the plan was to use its Western Fleet for operations along the coast of West Pakistan, especially around the Karachi harbor. This video talks about the planning and the potential targeting of India's Western Fleet in December of 1971. Please watch part 1 and part 2 of this series to gain more context around the naval wars of 1971. Links are attached in description. The main aim of Indian Navy's Western Naval Command was the destruction of as many Pakistani naval units as possible. A complementary aim was to attack Karachi and to carry out bombardment of Gwadar and Pasni. A blockade of Karachi was to be instituted to prevent petroleum and other essential supplies needed in war from reaching West Pakistan. The Naval Chief, Admiral Nanda, had clear ideas on how the Navy could be used in its objective, and he felt he needed to get the go-ahead from the Prime Minister herself. So, in October of 1971, he went to see the Prime Minister and briefed her on the Navy's plans. During the briefing, he specifically asked the Prime Minister whether the government would politically object to the Navy's attacking Karachi. The PM thought about it and then responded, "Well, Admiral, if there is a war, there is a war." He thanked her and said, "Madam, I have my answer." This was the go-ahead he needed for the plans to be put in motion. The use of missile boats in attack mode. The plan was to use the Navy's Western Fleet as a diversion by sailing it out towards Karachi and have it stay around 300 nautical miles from the target. While the enemy's complete focus is on the actions of the Western Fleet, sail out a small attack team of missile boats along the coast and conduct a lightning-fast surprise attack at the heart of Pakistan's Navy, Karachi. The Russian-made Osa-class missile boat was to play the crucial role of the attack element in the Indian Navy's plans of assaulting Karachi harbor. These boats started arriving in India in February of 1971, 9 months before the beginning of hostilities. These boats were in fact designed and built by the Russians for the defense of ports and harbors against seaborne landings and for limited short-range attacks against seaborne landing forces. Their use, therefore, as visualized by the Russians, was for defensive operations. The Indian Navy's plans was to use the platform for its assault operation in Karachi. So, many parameters and conditions had to be tested and verified before the final go-ahead was given to these boats for the main plan. The final plans were created and provided to Admiral Kuruvilla, commander of the Western Fleet of Indian Navy. After reviewing the details of the attack boats and the plans for the assault, Admiral Kuruvilla stated that if these boats were to function with him at sea, he could guarantee total victory once contact was made with the enemy surface units, regardless of their superiority, speed, or firepower. Admiral Kohli and Admiral Nanda responded enthusiastically and ordered a series of sea trials with these boats. The first aspect that needed experimenting was the maximum speed at which these boats could be towed. Towing them under peaceful conditions was by itself a difficult task, but towing them at higher speeds under battle conditions was going to be infinitely more difficult. The naval dockyards, however, came up with a good arrangement that allowed these boats with full armament, fuel, and personnel to be towed at a reasonable speed. So the first aspect was resolved. Experiments were carried out with the missile boats in the attacking mode. As a part of this, the missile boat squadron carried out practice missile firing on a BPT, battle practice target, suitably fitted with radar reflectors. These test firings were successful. It was soon apparent on assessment of the defense of Karachi harbour that these missile boats had the potential to be a strong assault force for their operations. Karachi was defended by shore-based military aircrafts. It was necessary, therefore, to minimize the possibilities of the missile boats being attacked from the air. So, it was planned that the attacking force would arrive 150 nautical miles from Karachi at midnight, go in at maximum speed during darkness, carry out the attack, withdraw at maximum speed, and be 150 nautical miles away by dawn. Darkness would make it difficult for the enemy aircraft to locate and attack the force. Despite all these precautions, the risks still were considerable, and some losses had to be accepted. The plans were ready and had to be initiated at the right moment for maximum impact. On December 1st, 1971, a signal was intercepted from west to east Pakistan that warned all merchant shipping not to enter Bay of Bengal. Another signal directed all civil aircraft to keep away from the Indian border. These signals were indicators that Pakistan was about to go to war within a very short time. There was very little time before the war to start, so the Naval Chief Admiral Nanda ordered all ships present in Bombay Harbour to be put to sea within 24 hours. It's all about timing. The Indian Navy anticipated in its deliberations that there was a twofold threat to their naval fleet on the Western Front. Upon declaration of war, the Pakistan Navy would deploy its Daphne-class submarines off Bombay, as well as other important naval harbours in wait for the Indian naval fleet to move out. As soon as the fleet moves out, the submarines would attack the fleet. The Pakistan Navy also had the capability of using its midget submarines that could execute attacks on the Indian naval assets at the harbour as well, even before the Indian fleet had the opportunity to sail out. So, it was vital for the Western Fleet of the Indian Navy to sail out of the harbour before the enemy submarines had the opportunity to deploy outside the harbour and its midget submarines to execute their attacks within the harbour. On the flip side, the Indian Navy could not also move out its fleet too early before the beginning of hostilities, as that would create a lot of logistical hurdles for the Western Fleet. So, this gave the Indian Navy planners a very short window in which its Western Fleet would have to move out of the harbour. This window was calculated to be between 24 and 48 hours before the declaration of war between the two countries. This essentially means that the Indian Navy would have to correctly predict the beginning of full-scale war and move out its Western Fleet at least 24 hours before that time. The more accurate this prediction was, the better would be the outcomes for the Western Fleet of the Indian Navy. This plan and the calculation of the window had a major assumption, which was that the enemy submarines would commence their voyage to Bombay Harbour once the war is declared, or at the most 24 hours before that. This calculation of 24 to 48 hour time window was based on this assumption. This assumption, however, had a shortcoming, because little did the Indian side know that a Pakistani Daphne-class submarine was already outside Bombay Harbour since November 22nd, almost 2 weeks before full-scale war began between the two sides. Unknown to the Indian side, the Pakistan Navy had quietly moved its submarines into the sea between November 14th and November 23rd of 1971. Pakistan Navy's advanced Daphne-class submarine PNS Mangrove was located outside Bombay, patiently waiting for the war to start so she could draw first blood by destroying ships as the Indian Navy's Western Fleet emerged from Bombay Harbour. Indian Western Fleet under threat. PNS Mangrove was in location outside Bombay from November 22nd onwards. On that day itself, she was ordered to arm all torpedoes, and on 23rd of November, she was ordered to assume precautionary stage. On December 1st, 1971, PNS Mangrove had completed her patrol duty at Bombay, so PNS Hanger, which was patrolling off Porbandar, received orders to replace PNS Mangrove. PNS Hanger assumed its position outside Bombay on the same day. On December 1st itself, it had become clear to the Indian planners that full-scale war was to begin in the next 48 hours. So, according to the 24 to 48-hour window plan, on December 2nd, 1971, the Western Fleet moved out of its harbour to execute their tasks in accordance with the Navy's plan. PNS Hanger was in location outside Bombay. The Western Fleet was now in grave danger. Sonar. Submarines locate their targets by means of their radar and sonar used in active and passive mode. Sonar is acronym for Sound Navigation and Ranging. It is a device that sends out ultrasonic waves towards the target, particularly ships and submarines, and if contact is made, an indication is received that gives the range, direction, and possible depth of the target. PNS Hanger had very powerful sonars that could detect targets as far as 25 nautical miles. She was therefore well aware of the approach of the Western Fleet. This was a dream target for the crew of Hanger. Rear Admiral Raja Menon of the Indian Navy met with Captain PNS Hanger, Commander Tasneem Ahmed, along with his second-in-command, sometime after the war. The details of what happened, what transpired inside Hanger at that crucial moment are from what Admiral Raja learnt of the events during the conversation and also from the book Story of Pakistan Navy. PNS Hanger was located outside Bombay on the night of 2nd of December. It was on the surface when at 11:40 p.m. a large formation of ships was detected on her radar about 35 miles away. Hanger closed this formation to a range of 26 miles at 12:49 am on the 3rd of December and then dived to a depth of 40 meters. It then tracked the ships on its sonar till the early hours of the morning. A quick sweep by their radar at periscope depth revealed that the formation consisted of 6 escorts, screening a main body of 4 ships. This was without any doubt the Western Fleet, comprising the cruiser INS Mysore with supporting auxiliaries in her escorts. There was a problem though. PNS Hanger did not have clearance to initiate the attack on the incoming fleet. War had not yet been declared between the two sides, and if PNS Hanger launched its torpedoes and sank one or more of the ships on the approaching fleet, it would have been an event that would start a full-scale war. A great responsibility therefore rested on the shoulders of the captain of Hanger, Commander Tasneem Ahmed. Declaration of war is a serious decision that has both military and political components to it. It cannot be taken lightly because a side would have plans in place for the event for optimum use of element of surprise on multiple fronts and to maximize gains from the initial assault. In Pakistan's context, in 1971, sinking of these vessels, even though may have done some serious damage to the Indian Navy's Western Fleet, would have led to the Pakistan Air Force losing its element of surprise for its plan of multiple simultaneous air raids on Indian Air Force installations in the north. So attacking the incoming Indian Naval Fleet before the declaration of war was not a decision PNS Mangrove could take unilaterally. At around 3 am on December 3rd, 1971, the Indian Navy's Western Fleet was passing through the kill zone of PNS Hanger. On the approach of the Western Fleet, Near chaos prevailed within PNS hangar. The captain was against attacking the fleet at a stage when war was not declared, while other crew members wanted him to launch the attack irrespective of whether war was declared. Eventually, the members of the crew were overruled by the captain and they decided not to launch the attack on the Indian fleet. The Indian fleet passed over hangar unaware of what was happening below them. It is also important to note that none of the warships of the Western Fleet were able to detect the presence of hangar since the fleet was sailing at high speed. The Pakistan Air Force attacked the Indian airfields approximately between 5:40 and 5:45 pm the same day, around 15 hours later. The crew of PNS hangar came to know about this only at 8:20 am on December 4th. The captain and the crew of PNS hangar were extremely disappointed on missing such a dream target, as it is detailed out in the book Story of Pakistan Navy. Admiral Nanda also wrote about this event in his book, The Man Who Bombed Karachi. Years later, the wartime commanding officer of the Pakistan submarine hangar informed me that he had been lying in wait outside Bombay Harbour and that the Western Fleet had passed over him on the night of 2nd to the 3rd of December. He had been egged on by many hotheads in the control room to fire his torpedoes, but he had refused on the grounds that war had not broken out. The Western Fleet was already at sea when war was declared. The Indian Western Fleet now could execute its planned operations during the war. It was due to the effective planning and foresight of the Indian Navy that at the time of beginning of hostilities, the Indian Navy was already at sea and was in a good position to give a near immediate response to the enemy's first move. The Indian side undeniably got the advantage from the poor communication systems and processes on the enemy side. This, however, does not take anything away from the superior tactics of the Indian Navy. After all, chance favors the prepared mind. In Indian Navy's response to the enemy with the attack on Karachi, the primary role of the Western Fleet was to stay in the area between 200 to 300 nautical miles from Karachi and pose a threat to it. This would draw the attention of the Pakistan fleet towards them, while the Pakistan Navy's attention was on the moves of the Western Fleet of the Indian Navy, conduct a swift lightning strike at Karachi Harbour using the Osa class missile boats. These boats were to make a thrust from Saurashtra coast and conduct a clandestine, swift attack on all enemy naval assets in and around Karachi. This attack was codenamed Operation Trident.